Hey, good day, good afternoon, and wherever you are in the world. My name is Marcel Hyde, channel Marcel Mindset.
One, two, three, four.
I want to remind you guys, please hit that subscribe button below, hit that notification bell, because these are episodes that you don't want to miss out on. For those of you out there, if you're lacking in faith, you're lacking in hope, God is there for you. God is willing to guide you and lead you and direct you. Hello, world, and welcome to another episode of Marcel Mindset TV. Remember, guys, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button below, and if you find any type of value from this podcast here today, make sure you go and share it to someone that you think could help them change their life and they can grow. So now that we're on the topic of changing your life and helping people grow, we have the ability to have a very special guest on the show. You know, there's people out there who really take the time to spend with the younger generation. And it's so important because the younger generation is the future. And this man is passionate about spending his time with the younger generation and helping them develop the right mindset and the tools to equip them for a bright future. So I'd like to introduce to the show, Donovan Taylor Hall.
Hey, thank you so much. That's a very, I really appreciate that intro. It's a really nice one.
Great. Excellent. Thank you, Donovan. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming on the
you.
show. I know you're extremely busy. You have a lot of projects going on. And I just want to start off by saying and paying my respect to you because we know how patient you have to be to work with youth. You know, and it takes a special person to really take the time to work with the youth population. So I just hats off to you and just want to pay my respects to you for doing that.
I appreciate that. You know, I get that comment a lot. And to tell you the truth, especially with this conversation we're having today, working with kids, I found is almost easier than doing this work with adults because once adults have mindsets kind of stuck in them, it
Right.
takes a lot more to get people to shift and to get people to change.
Yep.
And kids are just so malleable at that age.
Right.
And so for me, I think doing this specific kind of positive mindset work with kids
Yep.
is actually a lot easier than it would be with working with adults. But it does take a very certain kind of energy to
Right.
be able to keep up with them. So I appreciate that. It's an honor to be able to work with young people.
Yeah, that's great. And it's great work that you're doing. And we wish you nothing but the best on your journey with these kids. And talk about energy. Like, I just want to say, you know, this is actually my first time meeting you. And sometimes I come on these podcasts and I could feel energy through the screen. And immediately when I saw you, my energy shifted. Like, I feel this positive, bright, energetic, fun-filled energy. So I just want to say that. Right.
That's wonderful.
So let's
I love to hear that.
Great. Let's get into the show, you know.
All right.
So for our audience out there who, you know, may not know you, who is Donovan Taylor Hall?
What a great question. I think I have done so much stuff with young people in this kind of arena that I've always kind of struggled with figuring that out to kind of say this is who I am. But I think the most important identifier I would like to use is like a youth empowerment advocate.
Right.
I just all the work that I do, whether it's content creation, whether it's online coaching, speaking, curriculum development, it all revolves around helping kids feel empowered in their lives and helping them recognize the greatness that they have inside themselves already and how to really take care of it and build that relationship with themselves. So when they have the opportunity, they can really step into themselves fully. Right. So I think youth empowerment advocate would be the best way to describe who Donovan Taylor Hall is.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And we know, at such a young age, kids, they're very vulnerable, right? So having someone like yourself is fantastic to kind of help them with, if they're struggling with things in their life. Because as a kid, we're still developing ourselves and who we are as a person. So having you as a role model is very important in a kid's life. So at the end of this podcast, we definitely want to promote your services and you to the audience, because we want parents, because I have parents that view this,
Yeah.
we really, a lot of times you have your kids and they may not be talking to you about certain things, but Donovan is someone that they can have those conversations with, because maybe they don't feel comfortable telling you certain things that's going on at school or in their life, but someone like Donovan could come in and help them with these things. And it's very important for their future and their growth. So I want to ask you this, Donovan, what are some ways that kids can actually develop their self-worth?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting question because in youth empowerment work, obviously we want to empower the kids to do the work, but it also, in things like helping kids develop self-worth, it's really important to have positive, safe relationships with adults that can help them recognize these things. And when you were saying earlier, is I work with kids as a coach online, and oftentimes parents will say, well, my kids won't talk to me, or they won't open up, or they won't listen to me. And I think that there used to be that saying of it takes a village to raise kids. And I think that we have missed out on that so much, or we've put such a heavy burden on teachers who are already doing so much to kind of hold space for even more.
Right.
And I wanted to kind of create an opportunity to be a safe, positive relationship with an adult that doesn't exist in the classroom, because it does take a village. It does really help to have safe relationships where you can explore these things in life. And it doesn't mean that your parents are bad. It doesn't mean that you're doing a bad job as a parent. It's just a natural need that is missing from a lot of people. So I think it's really a big blessing to be able to step into that role, to be able to support families and support kids. So there's two kind of ways I look at this, which is like, how do kids build self-worth? And then how do we as adults help kids build self-worth? And I'll start with the adults one, because that one I think is really important. It sounds kind of silly to say it this way, but honestly, simple things like apologizing to kids and thanking them. Those are two massive ways that we can help kids build self-worth. When adults make mistakes, there's often this like, I'm the adult. I don't have to explain myself to you. You're the child. You need to just deal with it. And what that does is it starts to degrade the person's belief in their worth, right? Where it's like, I'm not even worthy of an apology from the adult in my life who loves me. So one of the most important ways that we can help kids build self-worth is to recognize that they deserve respect and courtesy and kindness in all the ways. And when we have these moments where we cause harm unintentionally or, intentionally when we're mad, to be able to apologize to them. I also think gratitude is a huge one. Oftentimes kids are looking for worth. Kids are looking for value. They're looking for safety. And often the only space that we give them that we as a society deem as accessible, is school, basically. Which is like, if I'm not getting good grades in school, I must have no value. I must have no worth. And that might be a motivation issue. That might be a comprehension issue. But either way, kids need opportunities to see that they're valued. And I think that if we can practice gratitude, so not just saying thank you to kids, but saying this specific action or this way that you show up in the world has this positive impact. It's a really powerful way for kids to see that they have worth and value that's not connected to their accomplishments. A kid might struggle with English and also be really good at sharing kindness with other people. Or someone might be struggling with understanding math, but at the same time, demonstrating really powerful leadership qualities. And I think that it's just important that we help articulate that for kids and give them spaces to discover that, because a powerful way for kids to build their self-worth is to recognize their character strengths. That's a huge element of the work I do, is helping kids recognize that they have these innate strengths already in their character. And those things are very humanistic, and those things can be applied in so many situations with so many different people, and they have an opportunity to really contribute to the world around them. So I think helping kids articulate their strengths and learn, even things like humor. which often get kids in trouble. Humor is a strength. And
Yep.
when you can help kids understand that, they can take power over it. They can be more conscious of how am I using this strength
Right.
versus like letting it kind of just flow out of them and getting them in trouble, right?
Yep. Okay. I really like that because it's so important, that we spend the time in helping kids develop that self-worth. It's so important. So thank you, Donovan, for doing that work with the kids. And sometimes parents, they do it unintentionally, like they're extremely busy, so they don't even realize. So like hiring a coach like Donovan, he can discover those things within your child. So
Yeah.
I want to talk about emotions. Like we all have emotions, right? And sometimes we hear people say, oh, control your emotions or don't be emotional. So I really want to talk to you and ask you, how do we control our emotions, and are emotions good or bad?
This is a huge question. Um, One of the reasons that some of my videos went viral is because I'm an emotional person.
Right.
It's just kind of like who I am. And oftentimes I would get messages from other men that were saying like, "Oh wow, it's really powerful to see you being emotional," or
Right.
"I wish I could do that." And for me, it's kind of I don't have a choice.
Yep.
Like I don't really have a choice. I'm
Right.
moved very easily. And so I'm not often crying because I'm sad. Things
Right.
like beauty or excellence or really human moments, they always just kind of get to me. And I think that I just allow myself to share this because I want to help kids understand that emotions are not a bad thing.
Good.
Emotions are something that we all have.
Right.
And what we're responsible for is what we do with those emotions.
Right.
And so I think trying to don't be angry or don't be sad, I think is a really unfair experience because just like the character strengths, we can learn how to harness our emotions. We can learn how to do something with our emotions.
Right.
We can learn how to really lean into those things, but we often stop at don't have this emotional
Right.
reaction.
Yep.
And it's really frustrating because that's a human thing. It's a very human thing to have emotions. And
Right.
I think until we get past this idea of telling people that it's not okay to be emotional, that we're not going to be able to talk to kids about what do you do with these emotions,
Right.
right? Like, how are you, because you're not responsible for the emotions you feel. Like, that's just a natural thing. Emotions happen, they come
Yep.
and go, right?
Yep.
But you are responsible for what you do in a reaction to an emotion.
Right.
So if I'm angry, if a kid is angry, it's okay to be angry, but hitting someone,
Yep.
right, is not okay. But that's the
Exactly.
reaction. That's
Yep.
the reaction. But I think sometimes we think if we tell kids to push the anger down, that they won't have that reaction, but that's
Right.
not the case. And if they don't have an outright reaction, pushing emotions down will always come back to bite them in the ass. I mean, the
Right.
butt. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry about
Okay.
that.
No
Sorry,
problem.
sorry.
Yeah.
It will always come back to bite you. And I think I tried so hard as a young person to push my emotions down, and I
Right.
was so ashamed of them. I was really sad as a young person, and I was really ashamed of myself because as a man, especially as a black man,
Yep.
never felt like it was okay to be sad. As an
Exactly.
adult, I can look back and be like, oh, I had 5 major deaths happen to me as a young person,
Right.
right? Like,
Yep.
of course I'm sad. And I think
Exactly.
pushing it down, all that did was make me sick. It made me
Yep.
depressed and
Yep.
it made me not feel safe within myself because I didn't have a safe place to express my emotions and then to figure out what do I do with these things.
Right.
So I tried really hard to help kids with like understanding and validating that emotions are real and they're okay to have,
Right.
right? But what you're responsible for and how we can empower you is to figure out how to bring yourself back, how to
Right.
ground yourself once you've had this big emotional release or this big
Yep.
emotion come up in you. And then what do you do to tend to that feeling? What do you do to
Exactly.
take care of that feeling?
Right.
That's like deep self-care. And I don't think we hear enough about that.
Right. Yeah. I really love that response because especially myself being a black man as well too, you always hear be strong, don't
Mm-hmm.
express emotions, don't cry. Right. So it's really good that you're saying that it's okay to have these emotions and it's actually
Mm-hmm.
harming you sometimes when you keep these emotions in. It could lead
Yep.
to depression. Right.
Yes.
So, talking to someone about how you're feeling and not always suppressing your emotions, so I like that. And you just brought up a word and it kind of, it does relate to the next question. You said self-care. So,
Yeah.
a lot of times, we're told to, take care of yourself, have self-care. And some people don't know what self-care
Mm-hmm.
is. So my question to you is how important is self-care And what are some things we can do for our self-care?
Yeah, I think often this makes sense. I think often we forget the self part in self-care.
Right.
And there's a lot of things like meditation, things like yoga, things like taking a bath, things like going for a walk. There's a lot of things that help a lot of people and they consider them to be self-care. But one of the things that I've learned is that when we have a deeper relationship with ourselves, when we have a stronger understanding of who we are and what we need, your
Right.
self-care is going to look different. It's going to look different. So for me, self-care recently, I just went through a really tough period in my life where I was isolating a lot and I was
Yep.
really drained and really depressed and feeling so anxious while all these good things were happening around me. And I was doing my gratitude and I was doing my daily walks and I
Right.
was going to the gym and I didn't feel any better. And what I realized was that was kind of surface level, not in a bad way, but just like kind of taking care of the symptoms versus the deeper need that I needed. And
Right.
it was to really, for me to connect with people I cared about. And that even
Exactly.
though I felt like I was struggling and I wanted to be alone, the second that I started spending time with the people in my life who love and care me, I felt this deeper kind of self-care happening where it
Right.
was like this really tends to me, this really replenishes me, this really brings me back to where I need to be. And
Right.
so I really encourage people to understand that self-care is like what are the positive practices in your life that you can do that really tend to you. And if the
Exactly.
practices that you're seeing on Instagram and if those things are not working for you, it's not because they're bad. It just might mean that it needs a little bit more exploration around what does
Yep.
that mean for you. Whether it is expressing yourself. For instance, this is something
Hmm.
I did recently that helped me. I don't like journaling, but
Yep.
I know it's important. And
Yep.
everyone is like, "Oh, you should start a journal." And
Yep.
every time I write, I want to throw my notebook out the window. And so as I started thinking about myself as a person and started saying, okay, I do think that this process is important, but I hate writing,
Right.
right? I started thinking about talking. And I was
Yep.
like, well, I can talk.
Exactly.
I can do that. That's easy. So then I just started recording myself. I just started recording myself talking and I was
Oh.
processing things and I was getting it out, but I did it in a way that was connected to something that felt good for me.
Yep.
Like I'm a communicator, I'm a verbal processor.
Right.
And suddenly journaling was so easy when I figured out this
Yep.
works for me.
Right.
So I really encourage people to explore all the different ways and different positive practices that you can find that really connect and really intrinsically motivate you. So these things
Exactly.
motivate you without having to have a reward or having to feel like there's a consequence if you don't do these things.
Exactly.
Intrinsic motivation is like, I do this because I like it. And
Exactly.
so
Right.
finding out those different practices are really important. And we live in a time where there's so much access
Yep.
to these practices.
It's
They're
true.
everywhere,
Yep.
right? You can, even if you type into Google, like self-care practices are like uncommon self-care practices, just
Yep.
giving yourself a chance to expand
Right.
what self-care means. It's much more than just breathing and
Yep.
yoga. I do encourage breathing, by the way. I do encourage
Yeah.
a breathing practice because it
Yeah.
does help. It
Yeah.
does. But I think, especially if you're going through a period of burnout, I work with a
Yeah.
lot of kids who go through burnout and it's not helping them to do these kind of surface level self-care practices. They
Right.
need deeper practices and deeper spaces, and it looks different for each kid, you know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was a fabulous response. You
I
know,
hope so.
that was
Because I don't know. I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah. That's gonna
it's
help.
like what's but everybody, everybody says, and I try really hard, especially as I'm stepping into this public figure role. One of the
Right.
things I do to empower kids is I just offer things.
Yep.
And that's something that I learned for me is kids are so tired of being told this is right and this is wrong, and we
Right.
know what's best for you. And
Right.
so like subtle shift that we can offer kids is just say like, I'm offering this, leave it or take it.
Right.
Right. So if you decide to try this, it's yours. Like you have the control in the situation. We're not coming in and providing solutions for you. You're choosing these things for yourself. And I think that allows kids to feel more autonomy and
Right.
that builds self-determination.
Yeah.
And that's like what all my work is about, you know?
Well, yeah, that's fantastic. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I'm getting a session right here on this podcast. I'm here reflecting on myself.
Well, you know, and you said this earlier, and I want to be really honest about this, especially some of the disconnect I had with my public figure stuff
Yeah.
recently was because it's really important for me to be authentic with
Right.
kids. And I think that social media really pushes us to highlight the positives of
Yeah,
ourselves and our
it
lives, and it
does.
really kind of puts this main character syndrome on us.
Right.
And I think what I want to show kids is like I didn't hit this point in my life where I'm like I'm perfect and now I get to
Exactly.
help you be perfect. It's not
Right.
about that. I'm 33 and I am
Right.
always learning and I am always growing. My
Exactly.
brain might be done developing, but my spirit is developing and
Right.
my professional self is developing and my personal self is developing. And
Right.
so to get in the trenches with the kids and
Yep.
say I am trying to develop,
Exactly.
like develop with me,
Right.
right? Like that is a really empowering thing so kids don't feel like there's something wrong with the fact that they're
Exactly.
learning, and we try to
Yep.
hide that from kids so much that that we make mistakes or that we're
Yep.
learning. And I don't ever want to be a public figure that puts that image off. I always want to
Exactly.
be someone that says, this is what I'm working on, here's how I'm growing, here's how
Exactly.
I'm making mistakes, here's how
Right.
I'm learning to take care of myself.
Yeah. And you got to respect someone like that, who's going through their own issues, their own problems, because they're able to help other people because they've been through it. You're going through it. You went through your struggles and now you're helping other people. So it's good to see, and you're being vulnerable saying that, you've gone through this. So you have to respect someone that's being that vulnerable. So I want to ask you, a lot of times people say like they feel stuck, they just don't know which direction to head in. Maybe they're stuck about, what they should take in school, or maybe they're just stuck in certain areas of their life. So if someone is feeling stuck in their life, how do they kind of get unstuck?
I think that's a really big question because stuck looks different for a lot of people. Like you
Yep.
were saying, being stuck in a depressive episode is going to look different from being stuck in motivation. And
Right.
being stuck in motivation is going to be looking different from being stuck around making an important decision in your life.
Right.
I think what I try to help kids a lot with is developing a stronger sense of trust in themselves and listening
Yep.
to themselves. I think helping kids become their own advisor
Right.
is really important so they can start to listen to themselves and trust themselves a little bit more. But I think it really depends on the context of what that stuck is,
Okay.
because sometimes stuck is like a mental health out like
Yep.
episode, and to try to read positive things may not be the solution, or
Right.
you may need to get some support and help, right?
Exactly.
Or if you're struggling with motivation, um, being stuck, the responses and the strategies and the practices I think would be very different
Yep.
than kind of where you are. So I think what's important is articulating what this stuck is, right?
Yes.
Am I
Okay.
suffering right now? Or am I
Right.
struggling? Struggling is it's productive. It's how we grow. It's something that
Yep.
we shouldn't shy away from. Suffering doesn't offer us lessons. And I think when we don't know how to articulate that we're suffering, or we don't know how to articulate what our struggle is, it's really hard to get the help that we need.
Yes.
And so I
Exactly.
think what's important is for people to sit down with themselves and say, what's coming
Hmm.
up for me? Is it
Right.
fear?
Yep.
Is it a lack of resources? Is it a
Right.
lack of support? Is it a like mental health episode? What's
Right.
happening with me? And then going from there to figure out what's the best step to move forward.
Yep.
But I think just the feeling of being stuck is such a human feeling, but
Yes.
we can all, I think, in lots of ways, we all feel stuck.
Yep.
Uh, one other thing I try to work with too is sometimes when we're stuck, it's because things aren't happening fast enough,
Yep.
or we want results immediately.
Right.
And when I feel stuck, like in these past 2 years since I was on the Today Show, I've been trying to make a TV show. I've been trying to build
Right.
myself as a public figure. And
Yep.
oftentimes I kind of project into the future so much of I
Right.
should be here, or why am I not here? Why am I stuck? That
Exactly.
it really loses this opportunity to be like, I'm here.
Right.
I'm in this moment. I'm not stuck. I'm just existing. I'm just
Exactly.
being.
Right.
Things are happening around me. I'm going to release some of this control and just allow myself to be. And
Exactly.
so also identifying like, are you trying to rush? are you rushing these things in your life,
Right.
or are you able to just sit with yourself for a little bit? And
Yep.
being stuck means maybe you need to sit and think for a little bit, especially
Right.
when it comes to motivation and figuring out what you want to do and where you want to go. That's an area where I say there's a lot of guidance in that stuck, but
Yep.
sometimes we want to run away from the stuck so bad that we miss an opportunity to really listen to ourselves
Yep.
in those moments, you know.
That's that's great. That's a lot of valuable tips that people can kind of implement in their life if they're feeling they're in a place of stuck, and really looking at what position of stuck you're in, right? And we all go through that. Okay. So I want to ask you, because, when we're young, we dream. We're continuously dreaming. And sometimes when we get older, we stop dreaming, whatever it may be. Maybe we've given up on our dreams, or we just don't think it's possible. So this channel, I want to encourage people to start dreaming again, right? So my question to you is, do you encourage people to chase their dreams?
This is a really good question. I do. I
Yeah.
do. I encourage people. I know it may sound a little bit different, but I encourage people to build a good relationship with
Yep.
themselves. And that
Yep.
that means understanding your passions.
Yep.
That means understanding your strengths. It means understanding your values,
Right.
right? And then, because I think this idea of we tell kids you can be whatever you want, I don't tell kids that. I
Yep.
don't. I don't agree with it, because words are really important and they're really powerful. And so for
Right.
me, I kind of go another way, which is like figure out what you're good at,
I like that.
figure out what intrinsically motivates you, right? What
Right.
are the things that excite you? Figure out what are your values in life. So if a
Yep.
kid can say, Here are my strengths, here's how I show up in the world in positive ways, here's what I care about in the world, here are
Right.
the things that excite me. I think once you develop those things, you can start to build an image for what this dream looks like that's based in reality.
Right.
And that's kind of what I did as a young person. Was I've had people for years be like, oh, you need to go to school for teaching, you need to do education. And I've been like, no, no, I
Yeah.
did positive youth development. I
Yeah.
have this dream of being a public figure, and I don't know how it's going to happen,
Yeah.
but I'm going to keep pursuing it. But I had to
Exactly.
understand, here are my values,
Right.
right? So everything that I'm doing is aligned with my values.
Right.
And so moments where I was taking jobs or opportunities that didn't connect with my values, I felt it. And I was
Right.
like, this isn't for me.
Yep.
Right. Then I learned my strengths. So things like communication and storytelling, things like positivity, things like
Right.
strategic, things like woo, winning other people over,
Right.
like all of these things, I started to look at them and said, okay, well, this can be applied in a lot of different places, and
Right.
realizing that maybe I could be a speaker, or maybe I could be kind of a public figure. And so I didn't have this specific dream for years.
Right.
I've just always had a strong sense since I started developing myself around what are my strengths, what are my
Hmm.
values, what are my passions, and how can I combine those
Yep.
into what feels like a dream opportunity for me.
Right.
And I think pursuing your dreams is a really powerful thing to do. And it doesn't have to stay with just kids. At any point in your life, if you say, this is something I'm passionate about, this is
Right.
something that is giving me energy and I'm thinking about it all the time, that's a dream of yours and
Yep.
you can pursue it. And that's why I teach growth mindset to kids and to adults,
Right.
because you can always like work towards something that you care about. You can always get better or make progress on a dream
Right.
through the same things that we were teaching kids: practice, time, and effort in these different arenas. So
Hmm.
I think because chasing your dreams, sometimes people, when they think of dreams, they think of it being kind of not based in reality. I don't think that's
Right.
true, but I think that this formula kind of helps kids discover it in a more organic way
Right.
versus because I'll, like, for instance, kids will say, I want to be a YouTube star.
Yep.
And I said, well, what do you want to do on YouTube? And they're like, I don't care. I just want to be famous and have money. And I'm like, all right, but also,
Yeah.
like, what do you want to talk about? Who do you
Right.
want to help? What are you good
Exactly.
at that you can
Yep.
offer other people? Right. And then it's like, oh, well, I love humor and I love making people smile. I'm like, all right, just knowing that humor is a strength of yours and you want to make
Right.
people happy, those are two things that you can now infuse into your channel, and it starts
Right.
to solidify it. And then you're like, okay, well, there's this way I can go with this
Right.
that is based in actionable steps
Yep.
and based in my kind of organic self. But I think when you just say chase your dreams, that can sometimes, especially for kids, that
Yep.
can be very, I don't know what that means, you
Right.
know?
Yep. That's fantastic. And I feel like you might need to be working with some adults too, because
Oh yeah.
This message is not just for youth.
It's the same work. I think that
Yeah,
I'm so passionate about this. I get so frustrated because in so many ways, we separate ourselves from kids, but
yeah,
we are the same creatures. We're the same people.
yeah,
The same ways that kids try to take care of themselves, the same way that kids cause harm. Like I see this in adults all the time, but there's this
right.
hierarchy of like, I've earned this right
Yeah,
to be this way, and you are a kid and you don't. And it's a
right,
shame because when you can create co-regulated learning spaces with young people where
yeah,
adults and kids are all working towards growth,
right.
there's so much community there, and kids have this opportunity to then step up and say, we don't have to wait to have an impact because you're
Exactly.
allowing us to show up in our full power right now. And
Yeah,
imagine what that would be like if we created more spaces where kids can see that adults are working on things and
that's
that
true.
adults are growing and that adults are not set in stone, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, that's really good. So for the parents out there watching this, you might want to reach out to Donovan because he may be able to help you as well too.
I talk to parents all the time about
Yeah,
this stuff. I
definitely.
like coach parents on accident
Yeah,
because they'll say the same stuff. The skills that I teach kids are
right.
I looked at what adults were learning and what are the main things adults were struggling with. And it
Yeah,
was like how they talk to themselves, how they treat themselves,
exactly.
how they view themselves. And I was like, great, now take these three skills and just do it earlier with kids,
Yeah,
right? Just like catch them before it becomes so permanent. And that's why I
right,
said earlier, it's harder to work with adults sometimes because these mindsets that
right.
adults have been living with for years, they become
Exactly.
what feels permanent, that stuck feeling.
Right.
And the same antidote for that poison of I'm stuck and I can't change, this is who I am, is the same thing that I'm offering kids. It's the
Yeah.
same
Same
antidote,
thing.
which
That's
is
great. Yeah.
these practices that you can do, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, that's good. And we talked about mindset. Like you mentioned mindset a few times through this podcast, and mindset is everything to me. And we know there's a
Mm-hmm.
growth mindset and we have the fixed mindset. So for our audience out there, what does mindset mean to you? And how do you develop a growth mindset?
So I'm trying right now to kind of take growth mindset out of the academic, um, because I think that growth mindset is a really important, it's like a lifestyle of
Yep.
living and developing yourself as a person. And when I work with kids on growth mindset, it's not about I can get better at math.
Yep.
And they're because they're getting a lot of that stuff in school now, which is wonderful.
Right.
I'm talking about kids who hate themselves. I'm talking about kids who don't like themselves,
Right.
people who really struggle with how they treat themselves or how they view themselves, people who are people pleasers,
Yep.
perfectionists, people who struggle with opening up emotionally. All of these things you can get better at
Yep.
if you use growth mindset. And so, what I'm
Right.
trying to help people understand progress and that applying growth mindset, this idea of practice, time, and effort
Right.
is so important if you want to I try to practice growth mindset
Right.
with my emotional vulnerability, or I try to practice growth mindset with myself growing as a business owner,
Yep.
right? It's like I apply that same kind of mindset that I would help kids apply to
Right.
themselves. And I think mindset is really just your belief in your capacity and ability to do something.
Yep.
And so growth mindset is like, whatever this thing is that I'm feeling or how I view myself, I can
Right.
always change that. It doesn't
Yep.
have to be permanent.
Exactly.
Um, and I can do the work to really shift that. And that's empowering work, you
Yep.
know?
That's great. So, we really want to work on developing that growth mindset. There's different ways of going about doing that, whether it's hiring a coach like Donovan or doing readings or watching YouTube videos or whatever it is, but you really want to develop that growth mindset. And to me, mindset is everything. If I wasn't in the right mindset, I don't think I'd be doing this podcast. I don't think I'd be sitting
Mm-hmm.
across from Donovan here today. All right. So
Yeah.
thank you for that message that you just delivered. And we have a high school audience that watch my show. And, if you were to speak to a group of high school students, what is a piece of advice that you would leave them with that you have learned on your life journey?
Be your own best friend.
Love that.
Be your own best friend. Friendship
Love that.
is super important. Connection is a huge part of life. I understand that. But you have a relationship with yourself,
Right.
and no relationship in your life has a bigger impact on you than the relationship that you have with yourself. And
Exactly.
it's unfortunate that education is set up in a way that creates a lot of disconnect from self, where
Yep.
it's like if I'm my progress looks different from different people, then I'm not where I should be.
Right.
But helping kids, like when I go to high schools, I talk to kids about being kind to themselves,
Yep.
forgiving themselves,
Right.
right? Being compassionate with themselves around struggling. I think what's really important for young people is these systems out here, like your
Yep.
workforce, like your school, your education, like they're not going to care about these things
Right.
anywhere near as much as you are. And you have to take care of yourself.
Yep.
Your relationship with yourself is the one thing that you are guaranteed in this life.
Yep. It's true.
Everywhere that you go, everything that you do, every person that you interact with, every opportunity you lose, every opportunity you gain, the one thing that is there always is your relationship with yourself.
Yep.
And when you talk about growth mindset, you can always be developing a better relationship with yourself.
100%.
So when I was in my late teens and my early 20s, I went through a really tough period where I caused a lot of harm to other people and I caused a lot of harm to myself.
Right.
And I own up to this because I don't want kids to look at me and say, well, he's always been like this. The truth is, I
Right.
struggled a lot and I did
Yep.
things that I wasn't proud of and things that I was ashamed of.
Right.
And as I started developing myself more, I tried to distance myself and be like, that
Yep.
wasn't me, that I was a piece of crap back then. I'm so much better now.
Yep.
But as I developed my relationship with myself and I started practicing compassion and being kind, after I held myself accountable
Yep.
for the harm that I did, I was able to look back and say, I was struggling.
Right.
I was suffering. I was not getting the support that I needed. I had substance abuse issues. I had massive depression. I had
Right.
three major deaths happen within two
Wow.
years of each other.
Yep.
And I was able to look back and be compassionate with myself and say,
Right.
man, I was really struggling. And that kind of like self-compassion allowed me to heal. It allowed me to take care of myself.
Right.
And so, especially in this day where we live with social media, where there's all this pushing to be good
Right.
and good morally and also good professionally and
Right.
to have all your stuff together, like understanding that you're going to make mistakes,
Yep.
understanding that you're going to harm people, right? Whether intentionally or unintentionally, right? You have to have a good relationship with yourself that's based in integrity and
Right.
love and safety to be able to learn from these things and move forward. I'll never back down from the fact that I struggled as a young person and
Yeah.
that struggle harmed other people just like
Yeah.
other people harmed me in their own struggles.
Right.
But I've had so much healing and so much just emotional recovery
Right.
from being able to be compassionate with myself and look back and say, I was struggling and I was doing the best I could. And it wasn't the best, but it was all I knew at the time. And so if
Exactly.
you're a young person and you struggle with how you talk to yourself, you struggle with how you view yourself,
Right.
time, practice,
Yep.
effort.
Yep.
Time, practice, effort. If you can't love yourself, like yourself,
Right.
right? If you
Yep.
can't like yourself, commit to working on it,
I like
right?
that.
You can
Yeah.
get there.
Yeah. That's great. And it seems like you went on this like experiences, like the experiences you've had in the past, you really worked on yourself. Now you're really helping other people out there, so I really, really respect that you've gone through something in your life and now you've turned that into a positive because you're helping so many different people now. So that's a
Well,
huge thing.
if I could tell you, behind me
Yeah.
is a wall, is pictures of my kids. They helped me. And
Yeah.
I know that I was positive and I'm not, under like valuing myself when I say
Right.
this, but I feel like I was given a second chance when I
Yeah.
realized that I could help kids and every opportunity, every kid that I've connected with, every kid that I've supported has been a way of taking care of myself and helping
Right.
me. And I express this to kids to let them know that they've had a massive impact on me and
Right.
that even without them knowing, them just being in their struggle and allowing someone to take care of them
Yeah.
helps me and helps me. So I just feel so lucky and grateful for all the kids I've worked with, even the kids that can't stand me. I'm grateful because they've taught me
Yeah.
something. They've taught me something about myself. And I think
Right.
one thing I would also offer to other people, especially with kids who are discovering their strengths, is
Right.
be of service to people
Yep.
somehow. I don't know who that audience is, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, whether it's your
Right.
school community, whether it's a marginalized group.
Right.
Find a way to use your strengths to be of service to people,
Yep.
and you will receive so many benefits from it.
Yep.
Altruism, is one of the most powerful things that we can experience as humans.
Right. Yeah. I like that response. And you know what? I'm grateful for you. And I'm sure all the parents that have their kids working with you are also grateful, to have someone like you working with their kids. And I know for myself, when I have kids, I want someone like you in their corner working with them, because I don't know everything, right? And having someone
Yeah.
like you is going to really help them, develop themselves and have a positive self-image, so we got to be grateful for a man like Donovan. So I want to ask you, Donovan, passion, we talk about passion, right? And some people, they struggle with, finding their passion, or even the word itself, passion, like even knowing what it is, so what does passion mean to you? And how does someone find what they're passionate about?
Okay, so I have recently been reading an author named Ryan Holiday.
Ryan Holiday.
Um, Ryan Holiday. It's interesting because I ran on passion for a long time.
Right.
My passion was helping young people, and it was not sustainable. And
Yep.
in an interesting way, I've been learning the difference between passion and purpose.
Right.
And passion being viewed as like a good thing, passion is very, like, I think of like a fire,
Yep.
but I think that without boundaries and without direction to go, passion can sometimes burn us up in it. And
Yep.
that's what happened to me. That's my burnout came from like just years of pushing and being like,
Right.
I want to help as many people as I can, and I got to do this and I got to do this. I'm passionate about it. And
Right.
then one day I was empty and I was like, wow, I
Wow.
have nothing left to give. I don't want to be here anymore. It was one of the toughest times in my life. And I had to kind of take that passion and understand that it's cool to be aware of my passion,
Right.
but what am I going to do with this, right?
Yep.
What's my intent with this passion? And so I think that there's two ways that you can go with a passion. A passion can be more of a personal fulfillment kind of
Right.
thing. So if
Yep.
you're passionate about um, a hobby, or you're passionate about a cause that you want to really, well, not a cause, but if you're passionate about a hobby or an activity that brings you a lot of joy, right, then making time for that passion is really
Yep.
important because it will infuse a lot of energy into you. But for people who have causes, or for people who really want to help other groups, I think it's really important, and I'm taking this from Ryan, but I'm learning it deeply. I think it's really important to turn that passion into purpose,
Right.
right? Because purpose has boundaries, purpose has structure, purpose helps the work get done in a way that isn't this like huge bonfire that eventually kind of burns out. So I'm learning about that,
Right.
and it was very eye-opening for me because more recently, sometimes the passion part of me is the part that is connected to like my ego, and it's
Right.
connected to like I have to do this, or I'm the person, or I'm the one, versus like showing up every day and getting good work done,
Yep.
right? Which is what my purpose is. It's sustainable, it's connected to a passion, but it's not ruling me and it's not making me burn out. So
Right.
I just wanted to share that. Sorry you
I
got
like
the
that.
brunt of it. I just started reading this book, and
Yeah.
this guy is like exactly what I needed, because for so
Right.
long I was running on passion, but that
Right.
flame, it doesn't sustain us. It
Yep.
doesn't really, and it can really burn out if you don't get control of it.
Yep.
And I think that a lot of people can experience these passions, and then when they flame out, not understand where that passion went, especially when
Exactly.
it's cause driven. And I think it's important to shift that into purpose. And as far as like finding passions, I don't know. I
Yep.
don't know. I think you got it. Sometimes you just have to be open. When I started working with kids, this lady I worked under, she was a theater professor. She had
Yep.
an acting company, and she said, "Come work with kids." And I laughed at her. I was like, what? I was like hungover. I was like barely on time for class. And she was like, oh, I think you would enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I said no, but then she said it was like $60 for an hour. And I was
Yep.
like, yes, I will be there
Yeah.
on time, ready to teach.
Right.
And I got there and I started playing, and it was so fun. And I just felt this really deeply gratifying feeling of like,
Yeah.
I like where I'm at. So I think one way to help people kind of figure out things that they're passionate about, whether it's a hobby or it's a cause,
Right.
is what invokes flow in
Mhm.
you. What are the
Right.
things that you do where you lose yourself, where you lose time,
Right.
where you feel super connected to the moment and the activity or the things that you're doing, and it
Exactly.
can be hobbies or it could be causes. So my two flow areas for me right now are working with kids, right? Like whenever I work with kids, all the self-talk stops,
Yep.
all the kind of like thinking about the past, fretting about the future, all that
Exactly.
stops.
Yep.
I'm just with the kids, you know?
Exactly.
And then it also explains why these past few months I was struggling with depression so much because this is the longest I've been away from kids since I
Yeah.
started working with them, like out of the classroom. And I'm not
Right.
getting that flow experience. And
Exactly.
so I needed to find flow in a different way. So I went the passion route and I found kayaking.
Yep.
And I got on the water and I was like, this is it.
Yep.
I could be out here. They told me 2 hours was done and I wanted to cry. I was like,
I
I
want
need to
more.
stay
Yeah.
out here. Right. I need to stay out here. So
Yeah.
finding a personal flow passion for me has really helped take care of me. It's one of that deep self-care stuff too, is like,
Yeah.
what can you do that helps invoke flow, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's
Exactly.
reading your favorite book, whether it's talking to your best friend, what are the
Right.
areas in your life that you can experience those things?
Right. Yeah. Thank you. That's so valuable, and a lot of people need to hear that because a lot of people are really trying to figure out, what they're passionate about or what their passions are, or how can I simply just find my passion? So I think that's a very helpful answer to a lot of people out there. So we're
Well,
kind
can
of,
I add something
yeah,
too?
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Be open.
Yep.
Be open.
Yep.
Trying things. A lot of people are afraid to try things.
Yep.
And that's not their fault. That's kind of like what society's pushed on us. Stick to
Yep.
what you're good at, right? But if
Yep.
you go into things with an open mind, and just say like, I just want to see how this is,
Yep.
you'd be surprised at what comes up for you. Like I'm already thinking
It's
about my
true.
next move after I retire from working with kids,
Yeah.
and it's with elephants. And
Yep.
I had this weird obsession with elephants as an adult. I'm asking other adults like, what's your favorite animal? And they're like, what? And
Yeah.
I'm thinking about elephants all the time. And then my friend took me to meet one and I was like,
Yep.
this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to be of service to elephants. I
Yep.
love this. And I never would have found that passion if I
Right.
hadn't just listened to that voice that said, hey, explore this, check it
Exactly.
out,
Yep. And see.
see
Yep.
what comes up for you. It's okay to say this isn't for me. I've tried plenty of things that were not for
It's
me,
true.
right? But the things that I'm passionate about, I found through being open and being
Yep.
curious to see what this experience could be.
Yeah, I like that. Be open and try. You just never know. So I like that, Donovan. Thank you so much. So we are wrapping up the show here. I do have one final question to ask you. And I do want to say this has been great. Not only has it been fun, it's also been educational. And I'm sitting back here and I'm learning so much. So
We love to hear
yeah,
it.
we love, yeah, and that's the goal of the channel is really to help people. Like this is a show and I want people to learn on this show, right? We have Netflix and there's shows on there. So I want this to really be an educational channel, and where people can come to. It's a safe place. It's a safe space. And you can hear people like Donovan that can teach you and help you because this is helping me grow as a person. I'm going to rewatch this and see how I can grow just from listening to what Donovan has been saying, so
Well, and thank you for creating that space. It's important.
yeah,
And what I love about it is it's when you start thinking about what am I good at? What do I want to
yeah,
offer? Who do I want to support? Like you find people like you who are doing their
yes,
passions, and then
yeah,
suddenly people make sense where it's
yeah,
like, well, it makes sense that this person is putting so much time and energy into this because look at what they care about and look at who they want to serve.
yeah.
And so it's an honor to be in this platform with
Thank
you.
you.
I don't
Thank
view
you.
myself, I think we're all humans, and I think
Yeah,
that everyone who is out here trying to support other people, if we can all lift each other's work up, I think
yeah,
we would be a lot more connected. So I'm
right.
grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Donovan. Really appreciate that.
Mhm.
So I do want to wrap the show up with a final question. So we talk about mentorship, right? A lot of people say having a mentor is very effective. Some people say that it's hard to get a mentor because it costs a lot of money. So my question to you is how important is mentorship and how can someone find the right mentor for them?
I think this sounds like a cop out of an
Yeah.
answer, but I think it's really important. It just depends on the person because some people are incredibly self-determined. Some people can find mentorship through authors,
Yep.
right? Some people can read like a big mentor of mine is Brendan Buchard, and I read his books and I was like, this dude is talking to me. And I was like, this is the closest thing I had to a mentor.
Yep.
But then I had an experience of connecting with a man named Ashanti Branch who is doing the same work as me. And he was a black man working with
Wow.
black boys. And I was like, whoa, this is going to take my work to the next level. So I
Exactly.
think realizing when you've hit a point where you can't grow yourself anymore on your own, because I was
Yep.
reading books and it was like, I've done all these things. Like, I decided to take a course from Brendan and I really, really liked it. But then I realized I needed the human connection.
Exactly.
And I think, especially with social media, I know that people care so much about follower counts. And it's something that's been plaguing me for the past 2 years, because I've had production companies kind of poking at me saying, why don't you have more followers? And
Right.
I think that what social media can really be used for, especially for someone who is committed to your own personal development, is
Right.
finding mentors
Yep.
who might be able to support you, whether it's informally or formally,
Yep.
or just through watching content or building that connection. And
Right.
so the number of followers a person has doesn't matter anywhere near as much as the alignment of your values and their experience. If they've done something that you want to do,
Exactly.
right, they're someone that you can learn from.
Yep.
And especially with teens, there are so many mentorship programs
Right.
that are begging. I wish there were more mentorship programs for
Yep.
adults, but we like to pretend like once you're 18, you got to pay for it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, fine. I
Yeah.
guess I'll pay for it. But I've paid for mentors who didn't teach me anything.
Right.
I paid for mentors who didn't teach me anything. I've learned from friends who are not trying to mentor me and
Yep.
who've been some of my best mentors. And so I think
Exactly.
it's really about, what are you trying to learn,
Yep.
right? What are the different ways you can do it? What do you feel comfortable with? If you like
Right.
working with people, who is someone in your arena that maybe might have the opportunity to spare time to have a call with you, or maybe do some
Exactly.
informal coaching? Or if you have the resources, hiring someone who does this for a living.
Right.
I think it's really just about figuring out what it is that you want to learn.
Yep.
What are the different avenues that you can take? If you can't afford a mentor, I have a library card, and I am constantly paying library fees
Yep.
because I am always checking out books. And a lot of my books are personal development books.
Yeah.
Um, but thinking about what I want to learn, what does this person have to offer? What is an alignment with us,
Right.
right? Because if you work, I've also had mentors who are just, our values are so different that every approach that they took with me just didn't resonate, because it was like,
Right.
I would never do it that way,
Exactly.
because you're someone that puts money before people, or you're
Right.
someone that believes not to be emotional. Like, what am I going to learn from you?
Yep.
Right. Versus like someone who has values that are similar to mine, who has more experience. I can learn so much from how to show up in that space with similar values. So I
Right.
really encourage people to do research and to take chances on smaller accounts on social media of people
Right.
who are offering really good, like really good
Yeah.
content.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're so quick
Yeah.
to be like, well, this person doesn't have a verification mark, or this person
Yep.
only has
It's true.
2,000 followers. And I'm like,
Right.
bro, some of my favorite creators have like less than 500 followers.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. I really like that. So if this message resonated with you and what Donovan was saying, maybe Donovan's the coach for you. Maybe you need to reach out to him.
You're like, I'm a little busy right now, but no, but and I'll tell you this too. I've had some conversations. I've had like 4 conversations with young men who have
Yep.
been like, I don't know how to be emotionally available. Do you have some time to spare? And it's like,
Right.
yeah, right. Like, I don't have time all the time, right? I got
Yep.
to make a living
Of
and I got to
course.
survive. But also, that's like a passion of mine. And I make
Yep.
time for people who I think take it seriously and who really
Exactly.
need that support. And I know that
Yep.
I'm not the only person that does that, because people have
No.
done that for me.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been extremely inspiring. Like, you've inspired
Good,
me to continue on my
good,
journey. Like, I'm not
good.
stopping. Like, I'm hearing what you're saying, and you've given me hope. I'm like, I could do this. I want to develop myself even more, based on
Yeah.
what you said here today. So I just want to thank you. I did not expect this, but this was such an amazing show. It was such an amazing podcast. We really want to thank you here. And for our audience that want to reach out to you, that want to get connected, or just simply just want to watch your content or follow your journey, because you have an extremely bright future. There's no limit, honestly, to where you're going to go. I
I'm
could
glad
just,
to hear it.
yeah.
I'm glad to hear it. I had to
Yeah.
play this back too for myself, right? It's hard. It's hard. I really encourage people to connect,
Yep.
to connect to things that inspire you and to people who inspire you and work that inspires you. Um, for me, I'm on social media as DonoFriend. So
Yep.
it's DONO FRIEND, donofriend.
donofriend.
And I have consultations for coaching if parents are interested. However, I have like a pretty big wait list right now,
Wow.
which is a good but problem to have. Uh,
Yeah.
and over the next couple of months, I plan on developing more content for not just kids, but for adults. And I'm
Yep.
in the process of developing a docu-series. So
Wow. I'm excited for that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm doing as
Yeah.
much positive self-talk,
Good.
as much growth mindset, because if
Yeah.
this doesn't work out, it's not the end. It's
No,
just a path that's closed and it's time to
exactly.
take another one, you
I
know?
love that mindset. And I hope you write a book too, because I'll be the first one to purchase that book. I feel like you have a book in you too. You have so
If
much
I
to
can
say.
talk and somebody can write it, see,
There we
that's
go.
what happens. Like I know my strengths. Like if somebody's like, I'm willing to take all of your blurbs and all your
Yeah.
talking and turn it into a book, we would have something
Yeah. There you go.
phenomenal.
That might be an opportunity for someone who's passionate about out there
Yes,
about
yeah,
that.
someone
So
who likes writing, right?
exactly. Yeah. So we have here on the show, Donovan Taylor Hall, youth empowerment advocate, helping kids build positive relationships with themselves. He's a speaker, educator, coach, and content creator. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Donovan.
Thank you. I love your energy. I'm
Thank you.
so grateful to be on your platform. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you. Remember, guys, please subscribe to the channel. If you've received any type of value, and I know you did because I received a ton of value from this show today, please share this episode to someone that you think could help them grow. This channel is all about helping people grow. Thank you very much, Donovan Taylor Hall, for coming on the show. And I wish you nothing but the best. Take care, Donovan.
Thank you so much.